Don't drink that. 3 words shattered 6 years of silence. Alpha King Caleb Sterling stopped with the silver goblet half an inch from his mouth. Across Moon Hall, every conversation died at once. Nora Whitfield stood frozen near the back wall, one hand still pressed against the table she had used to steady herself. Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Some showed confusion, others disbelief. Victor Harlan looked as if someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Travis Harlan did not move at all. Nora barely noticed them. Her eyes stayed on Caleb. He lowered the goblet slowly. Unlike everyone else in the hall, he did not look shocked that she had a voice. He already knew. What changed now was that everyone else knew too. Nora felt the truth of that settle over her like cold rain. For 6 years, Redhaven had called her the mute Omega. Harmless, broken, easy to ignore. She had allowed them to believe every word because silence had kept something more precious than pride in her hands. Choice. Tonight, she had given up that protection in front of the entire pack. Caleb set the goblet on the royal table without drinking. Captain Jonah Reed immediately stepped beside it, while Crown Advocate Evelyn Cross watched the room with sharp, careful eyes. Nora could hear the soft scrape of chairs as guests leaned away from her. Whispers started almost instantly. She spoke. I heard her. She is not mute. Nora swallowed. Her throat felt raw, though she had spoken only 4 words. She had whispered alone over the years, just enough to keep her voice from disappearing completely. But speaking before a crowded hall felt different. Exposed. Permanent. Victor recovered first. Of course he did. Your Majesty, he said, stepping forward with the calm smile he used whenever he wanted cruelty to look reasonable. Nora has clearly become overwhelmed. She has suffered from her condition since she was 18. Whatever sound she made should not distract us from the ceremony. Nora's stomach tightened. 6 years, and Victor still knew exactly how to make her feel small without raising his voice. Caleb did not answer him. His gaze remained on Nora. That steadiness almost made things worse. She remembered the faint blue residue on the servant's fingertips. She remembered the quick glance toward Travis. She remembered seeing the same unusual color years earlier beside restricted inventory records in Redhaven's archive. Maybe she had misunderstood. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. But she had watched Caleb lift that cup, and suddenly, keeping her secret had felt impossible. Silence could protect her. It could not be worth another person's life. Nora, Caleb said. His voice was quiet enough that the hall had to stay silent to hear him. Come here. Her feet would not move at first. Then she forced one forward. Another. The distance across Moon Hall had never felt so long. She stopped several feet from the royal table. Caleb did not reach for her. He did not order her closer. He simply looked at her, waiting. That small act of restraint gave her enough air to breathe again. Tell me what you saw, he said. Nora glanced toward Travis. His pale blue eyes met hers. On his right hand, the Harlan signet caught the candlelight. Beside his cuff, barely visible, was the same faint blue trace she had noticed on the servant. Her fear changed shape. This was no longer a suspicion she could bury. Nora looked back at Caleb and spoke again, louder this time. Do not let anyone touch that cup. A murmur rolled through the room. Caleb's expression hardened, but not at her. He turned to Jonah. Secure it. Then his eyes returned to Nora. For one brief second, she saw understanding there, not surprise. Not accusation. He knew exactly what she had just sacrificed by speaking in public. But the rest of Redhaven did not yet. Victor stared at her with growing alarm, and Nora understood that the secret she had protected for 6 years had finally become more dangerous revealed than hidden. To understand why she had ever chosen silence in the first place, the story had to go back 6 years, to the night an 18-year-old Omega learned that one word could cost her freedom. 6 years earlier, Nora Whitfield was 18 years old and still believed that saying no should have been enough. She learned otherwise 3 nights before Redhaven's moon-claiming ceremony. Victor Harlan summoned her to his private office just after sunset. The room smelled of cedar, old paper, and the expensive tea he served whenever he wanted bad news to feel civilized. Travis stood near the window in a dark formal coat, one hand resting against the frame, wearing the same patient smile Nora had never trusted. Victor did not ask her to sit. He simply folded his hands over the desk and said, "The arrangement has been decided." Nora looked from him to Travis. "What arrangement?" Victor gave her a look that suggested she was being difficult on purpose. "At the ceremony, Travis will claim you." For a moment, Nora thought she had misunderstood. "No!" The word left her before fear could stop it. Travis glanced toward his father, mildly amused. Victor remained calm. "Your parents left you under my guardianship. Your family land still borders the eastern trade road, and joining your line to ours will strengthen Redhaven." Nora felt heat rise into her face. "That is not an answer. I said no." Victor leaned back in his chair. "You are an Omega with no parents, no independent household, and no political protection. You should be grateful that my son is willing to secure your future." Nora stared at him. Secure. That was the word men like Victor used when they meant control. Travis finally spoke. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." Nora turned toward him. "For whom?" His smile disappeared. That was when she understood this was not a conversation. It was preparation. Victor expected obedience. Nora left the office with her hands shaking, but she did not go back to her room. Instead, she crossed the dark central hall and slipped into the old records library beside the archive. She had spent enough time helping clerks there to know where outdated legal books were kept. For nearly an hour, she searched shelf after shelf, reading by the light of a single lamp. Most of the pages gave her nothing. Then she found the Royal Consent Codex. The leather cover was cracked with age. Nora almost passed over it until she saw the section on mate claims. She read it once, then again. A legal claim required explicit consent. For an adult who could speak, that consent could be spoken. For an adult who could not speak, local pack authority was not enough. A Crown advocate had to verify willingness privately through writing or sign before any claim could be recognized. Nora sat very still. Victor could pressure her inside Redhaven. He could intimidate servants. He could influence local witnesses. But bringing in a Crown advocate would invite questions. Questions about her guardianship. Questions about the land. Questions about other mate records Victor kept locked away. Nora did not know what those records contained yet. She only knew Victor avoided outside scrutiny whenever possible. She closed the book slowly. The answer in front of her was terrible, because it could work. She returned to her room long after midnight and stood before the mirror. "My name is Nora Whitfield," she whispered. Her own voice sounded frightened, human, hers. She swallowed and tried again. No. That word had failed her once already. She stared at her reflection until the idea stopped feeling impossible. The next morning, Nora complained of fever and weakness. By evening, she stopped answering questions aloud. When the pack healer asked her to speak, Nora opened her mouth, pressed one hand to her throat, and let only air come out. 2 days later, Victor stood over her with suspicion in his eyes. "Say something." Nora looked down and remained silent. He waited. So did Travis. Nora could hear her heartbeat in the quiet room, but she gave them nothing. At last, Victor turned away in frustration. The claiming ceremony passed without her. Nora thought she had escaped for a few days, maybe a few weeks. She did not yet understand that the safest lie she had ever told was about to become the life she would have to live for 6 years. At first, silence felt like freedom. Then it became work. Nora learned to answer questions with a nod, a shake of her head, or a few careful words written on scrap paper. She learned how long to hold someone's gaze before they became uncomfortable. She learned that people spoke differently around someone they believed could never interrupt them. Months passed, then years. Travis stopped looking at her as a future mate and started looking through her as if she were furniture. Victor found new uses for her. A quiet Omega who never argued was easy to place wherever no one important wanted to be bothered. First came pantry records, then supply lists, then old correspondence. By the time Nora was 21, she had been moved into the West Wing archive, where dust gathered on forgotten ledgers, and every official decision Redhaven had made eventually ended up on a shelf. Victor believed he had hidden her from the world. Instead, he had placed her beside every secret he had ever signed. Nora noticed the first strange entry on a cold morning in late fall. Emily Carter, age 22, voluntary mate transfer approved. Nora stared at the line longer than she should have. She remembered Emily. Everyone did. Emily had cried for 2 days before leaving Redhaven. She had told Nora, in a whispered conversation years earlier, that she wanted to go north to live with her aunt. Nothing about a mate. Nothing about a voluntary transfer. Nora checked the signature. Then she found another file. Same wording, different woman. Same unusual curve in the final letter of the supposed witness name. Nora felt a chill move through her. She kept looking. One case became 4. 4 became 9. By the end of that winter, she had written 17 names into a small leather notebook she kept hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her room. She did not steal official records. That would have been noticed. She copied dates, seal numbers, witness names. Small inconsistencies no one expected the mute archivist to understand. Then she found Mara Ellis. The registry listed Mara as deceased after a voluntary mate relocation nearly 3 years earlier. Nora remembered the day Mara disappeared. There had been no funeral, no memorial, just silence and a new line added to the archive. That was when Nora stopped telling herself the records might be clerical mistakes. She had survived by pretending not to have a voice. Other women might have lost theirs in ways no one could see. 6 months before Caleb Sterling came to Redhaven, Nora took her first real risk. Registry packets were sent to the Crown at regular intervals. She began slipping unsigned duplicate pages into the outgoing files, choosing only documents that could be compared against official reports already held by royal offices. She never wrote her name. She never asked for help directly. She only sent proof and hoped someone, somewhere, would notice. Weeks passed. Nothing changed. Victor still hosted dinners. Travis still wore the Harlan signet. The archive still filled with neat lies written in careful ink. Nora began to think the Crown had ignored her. Then, while cataloging a restricted inventory list, she found another detail that stayed with her. A confiscated substance called moonbane. Crown restricted. Pale blue residue. Most of the recorded supply had supposedly been surrendered years earlier, but the numbers did not match. Nora copied that discrepancy too. She did not yet know why it mattered, only that Victor's records had taught her never to ignore what did not fit. Then, one bright morning in early spring, a sound rolled across Redhaven that she had not heard in years. Royal horns. Nora froze beside the archive table. Outside, servants hurried toward the windows. Someone whispered that the king's convoy had passed the north gate. Nora's hand moved instinctively toward the hidden notebook beneath her coat. For 6 months, she had wondered whether anyone had read what she sent. Now the Alpha King himself had come to Redhaven, and Nora had no idea whether he was here because of her. The royal convoy entered Redhaven like a storm that never needed to raise its voice. Nora stood beneath the stone archway of the central pack house with the other servants, her hands folded in front of her and her small leather notebook hidden inside her coat. She had brought it to the archive before dawn to compare seal numbers, never expecting the king himself to arrive before she could return it to its hiding place. Now every secret she had collected seemed suddenly heavier against her ribs. Black carriages rolled to a stop near the north entrance. Royal guards stepped down first, followed by Captain Jonah Reed, broad-shouldered and watchful. Then came Evelyn Cross, the Crown advocate, carrying a leather case of legal documents. Nora recognized the silver emblem on the clasp immediately. Her pulse quickened. Crown law. Consent law. The very authority Victor had spent 6 years keeping away from her. Victor Harlan descended the front steps with a welcoming smile. Your Majesty, Redhaven is honored. Alpha King Caleb Sterling stepped from the final carriage. Nora had heard stories about him, most of them exaggerated enough to frighten children. None had prepared her for how controlled he seemed. He was tall, dressed in a dark traveling coat, with steel-gray eyes that moved across the courtyard without hurry. He did not need to demand silence. People simply gave it to him. Nora lowered her gaze before his attention could reach her. She had survived by being forgettable. Today was not the day to become interesting. Caleb greeted Victor with formal courtesy, but Nora noticed what Victor probably hoped no one would. Caleb did not compliment the estate. He did not ask about the feast planned for that evening. His first question concerned the Western Archive. "I will need access to your mate registries." Victor paused for less than a second. "Of course. May I ask what prompted such interest?" "Routine discrepancies." Caleb's tone remained calm. Evelyn Cross looked down at her papers. Victor smiled again, but the ease had left it. Nora felt something inside her shift. Someone had noticed. Maybe not everything, maybe not enough, but those unsigned copies had not disappeared into some forgotten Crown office. Caleb began walking toward the central doors. He passed within several feet of Nora, then slowed. She kept her eyes down. A strange warmth moved through her chest, so sudden that she almost inhaled too sharply. Her wolf, usually quiet and distant, stirred with an awareness Nora had never felt before. Caleb stopped. Nora saw only his boots at first, dark leather, motionless. Victor turned back. "Is something wrong, Your Majesty?" Caleb did not answer immediately. Nora forced herself to remain still. At last he looked toward her. "Who is she?" Victor gave a dismissive laugh. "Nora Whitfield, an Omega who works in the archive. She has been mute since she was 18. Nora hated how easily he said it, as if 6 years of her life could fit inside one convenient sentence. Caleb studied her face, not with pity, not with the careless curiosity she knew too well. He looked as if he were trying to solve something. "She works with the claim records?" "Only clerical duties," Victor said quickly. "She is nobody important." Something unreadable passed through Caleb's expression. People who handle records are often important. Nora risked lifting her eyes. Their gazes met for 1 second. The warmth inside her sharpened. She looked away first. Later, during the formal reception in Moon Hall, Nora carried document boxes from the archive while Victor entertained the royal party. Caleb stood beside Evelyn near a long table covered with registry books. Nora placed the final box down and turned to leave. Behind her, Caleb spoke quietly enough that no one across the room could have heard. "If you understand me, keep walking." Nora's next step nearly faltered. She recovered before anyone else noticed and continued toward the door. She told herself that meant nothing. Of course she understood him. Being mute had never meant being deaf. Then Caleb added, even softer, "And if there is something in these records I am supposed to find, touch the door frame before you leave." Nora's breath caught. She reached the doorway. Her hand remained at her side. 1 step more and she could leave without revealing anything. Instead, her fingertips brushed the wooden frame for the briefest moment. Behind her, Caleb said nothing. Nora kept walking. But for the first time in 6 years, someone had asked the silent girl a question without assuming he already knew the answer. By sunrise, Nora had convinced herself that Caleb Sterling would confront her about the signal at the doorframe. He did not. He entered the West Wing archive with Crown Advocate Evelyn Cross and Captain Jonah Reed, asked for the claim registries from the last 7 years, and treated Nora as if nothing unusual had happened. No accusation, no demand, no hint that he had understood her silent answer the day before. Somehow, that made her more nervous. Nora placed 3 heavy ledgers on the long oak table. Caleb stood on the opposite side, leaving several feet between them. "These are the original records?" he asked. Nora nodded. Evelyn opened the first volume and began comparing dates against a stack of Crown reports. Jonah remained near the door, close enough to protect the room, but far enough that Nora never felt trapped. Caleb turned a page. "There are missing sequence numbers." Nora took a pencil and wrote on a scrap of paper. Some entries were recopied before the annual reports were sent to the Crown. Caleb read it once. "Were you told why?" Nora shook her head. "Did you notice a pattern?" She hesitated. Then she wrote, The missing numbers appear most often beside mate transfers. Caleb did not praise her. He did not react dramatically. He simply slid the ledger closer and said, "Show me." That response unsettled her in a different way. He believed she was capable before she had proven anything to him. Nora pointed out the first gap, then another, then a third. Evelyn compared each one with the royal copies. The dates did not match. Neither did 2 witness seals. Caleb's expression stayed controlled, but his attention sharpened. They worked through the morning. Nora showed them where Victor's clerks had replaced pages, where signatures repeated too perfectly, and where transfer dates appeared before consent forms were supposedly signed. She never mentioned her leather notebook. Not yet. That was still hidden inside her coat, pressed against her side like a second heartbeat. Around noon, Travis Harlan entered carrying a message from his father about the upcoming Royal Moon Feast. His smile was easy, but Nora saw his eyes move toward the open registry, then toward her. "You have been busy," he said. Nora lowered her gaze. Old instinct, old protection. Caleb looked up from the table. "Miss Whitfield has been assisting the Crown." Travis's smile tightened. "She is only an archive clerk." "Then Redhaven should be grateful its archive clerk understands the records better than most officials I have questioned." Travis said nothing to that. His right hand closed around the Harlan signet before he turned and left. Nora watched the door long after it shut. Caleb noticed. "You are afraid of him." Nora reached for her pencil, but Caleb continued before she could write. "You do not have to explain that yet." Yet. The word stayed with her. By late afternoon, Evelyn uncovered a thin file wedged between 2 larger registries. Nora recognized the name immediately. Mara Ellis. The official entry stated that Mara had entered a voluntary mate transfer nearly 3 years earlier, then died after leaving Redhaven. Nora remembered Mara differently. Quiet, nervous, gone without a farewell. Caleb read the page and became completely still. Then he opened his own leather case and removed a Crown document. He placed it beside the Redhaven record. Nora stared at the signature at the bottom. Mara Ellis. The date was only 8 weeks old. Nora looked at Caleb, forgetting for one dangerous second to hide what she felt. "She is alive," Caleb said softly. Nora's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. 17 suspicious names had filled her private notebook for years. Until that moment, they had been questions. Now one of them was proof. Caleb met her eyes. "I came to Redhaven because someone kept sending the Crown documents that did not match these records." Nora stopped breathing. He lowered his voice. "I do not know who sent them." A pause. "But I think you know more than you have written down." Nora felt the hidden notebook against her side. For 6 years, silence had protected her from Victor Harlan. Now, for the first time, keeping silent might protect the wrong person. Nora did not answer Caleb in the archive. She could not. The words were there, trapped behind 6 years of instinct, but speaking them felt more dangerous than any secret she had ever copied into her notebook. Instead, she reached inside her coat and placed the small leather book on the table between them. Caleb looked at it, then at her. He did not touch it. Nora opened the cover herself. 17 names, dates, altered seals, missing reports, notes written in the tight, careful handwriting of someone who had spent years making herself invisible. Evelyn Cross read the first page and slowly straightened. Caleb turned to Nora. "You sent the documents to the Crown." It was not an accusation. Nora gave one small nod. Caleb was silent for a moment. "You've been doing this alone?" Another nod. Something changed in his face then. Not pity, something quieter. Respect. "You should not have had to." Nora looked away before that sentence could reach too deeply. By evening, the Crown had moved copies of the most important registry pages into the Royal Guest Wing under Jonah Reed's guard. The official ledgers remained secured in the archive, while Evelyn prepared a formal inquiry for the following morning. Caleb told Victor only that the investigation would continue, nothing more. Victor smiled through dinner. Travis barely spoke. Nora noticed both. After dark, she returned to the archive to retrieve one final note she had hidden beneath a stack of supply records. She knew she should have waited until morning, but the note contained the inventory number connected to the missing Moonbane shipment. She could not risk leaving it behind. The West Wing was quiet when she arrived. Too quiet. Nora found the note, folded it into her notebook, and turned toward the rear service door. A shadow moved beyond the glass. Her body went still. Someone was waiting in the corridor. Nora did not stop to see who. She slipped through the service door and hurried onto the western forest path. Cold air struck her face. Gravel shifted beneath her shoes as she moved faster. Behind her came footsteps. Steady. Close. Nora kept going. The old stone overlook was half a mile ahead, but she knew there was no path beyond it. She had chosen the wrong direction. The footsteps gained on her. Nora. A man's voice, one of Victor's household guards. Stop. Alpha Harlan only wants to speak with you. She did not believe that for a second. Nora clutched the notebook against her chest and kept moving until the path ended at the overlook. Stone railing, trees below, nowhere else to go. The guard stepped into the moonlight several yards away. Give me the notebook. Nora shook her head. Do not make this difficult. He took one step closer. Nora backed toward the railing. Her throat tightened. Every lesson of the last 6 years told her the same thing. Stay silent. Stay small. Survive. The guard reached out for the notebook. Nora reacted before fear could stop her. Stop! The word came out rough and soft, but unmistakable. The guard froze. So did Nora. Then another voice came from the path behind him. She said, stop. Caleb Sterling stepped into the moonlight with Jonah, several paces behind him. The guard immediately lowered his hand. Nora stared at Caleb. There was no surprise on his face now, only certainty. Caleb waited until Jonah escorted the guard back toward the pack house, then turned to Nora. You can speak. Nora could not deny it anymore. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Caleb did not move closer. Who made silence safer than the truth? Nora looked down at the notebook in her hands. She still could not answer. Caleb nodded once, as if her silence was an answer he was willing to respect. Then keep your secret until you are ready. He turned toward the path, giving her room to follow. Nora stood there for one more second, listening to the sound of her own breathing. 6 years ago, she had stopped speaking because powerful men had ignored her choices. Tonight, the most powerful man in the territory had heard her voice and chosen not to use it against her. For the first time, Nora wondered what might happen if Caleb Sterling learned the rest. By the following evening, Redhaven had dressed itself for celebration as if nothing had happened. Moon Hall glowed with candlelight. Silver banners hung between the stone columns. Music drifted softly beneath the conversations of nobles who had no idea that a royal inquiry was waiting for sunrise. Nora stood near the back of the hall in a simple blue dress, exactly where Victor Harlan expected to see her. Quiet, useful, invisible. But nothing inside her felt the same. Caleb knew she could speak. Evelyn had her copied records. Jonah had secured the most important evidence. And somewhere beneath all of that fear was something Nora had almost forgotten how to recognize. Hope. Caleb stood at the royal table beneath the carved moon crest. He had not approached her since the night at the overlook. He had kept his promise. No questions, no pressure, no public sign that her secret had changed anything between them. Victor, meanwhile, looked almost cheerful. Too cheerful. Nora watched him move through the hall, greeting guests and raising his glass as if tomorrow could not possibly destroy everything he had built. Travis stood several feet away near the ceremonial wine table. His right hand rested against the edge of the cloth. The Harlan signet flashed beneath the candles. Nora looked away. Then she looked back. Something pale marked the side of his cuff. Blue. Her body went cold. She had seen that color in the restricted inventory records. Moonbane. Nora followed Travis with her eyes. He leaned toward one of Victor's servants and said something too quiet to hear. The servant nodded, took a silver pitcher, and crossed the hall toward the king. Nora stopped breathing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe fear was turning every detail into danger. Then the servant poured Caleb's wine. As he lifted the pitcher, Nora saw the same faint blue trace on two of his fingertips. The room seemed to narrow. Caleb reached for the goblet. Nora's mind raced through everything she could lose. 6 years of silence. 6 years of carefully built distance. The moment she spoke, Victor would know that she had deceived him. The pack would know. Every person who had dismissed her would suddenly start asking what else she had heard. Caleb lifted the cup. Nora remembered the overlook. Who made silence safer than the truth? She remembered how he had stepped back instead of closer, how he had heard her voice and left the choice with her. The goblet moved toward his mouth. Nora stood. "Do not drink that." Her voice carried across Moon Hall. Music stopped. Conversations broke apart. Caleb froze. Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Victor's expression went blank. Travis went pale. Nora forced herself to keep standing. "Do not let anyone touch that cup," she said, louder now. Jonah moved immediately to the table and secured the goblet. Evelyn crossed toward him, her attention fixed on a pale residue near the rim. Victor recovered first.
"Your Majesty, this is absurd. The girl has deceived everyone for years."
Nora felt the old instinct return. Lower your eyes. Say nothing. Let him define the room. She did not. Caleb set his attention on her, and something powerful moved through Nora's chest. Warmth. Recognition. Her wolf rose inside her with sudden certainty. Across the hall, Caleb went completely still. He felt it too. The connection between them was no longer a strange pull or an unanswered instinct. It was real. Mate. The word appeared in Nora's mind, but Caleb did not move toward her. He did not claim her. He turned instead to Victor.
"No one touches Nora Whitfield."
Victor's jaw tightened.
"She is a liar."
"Then we can discuss lies," Caleb said. Evelyn placed the secured evidence beside the crown files. Caleb's voice remained calm, which somehow made every word land harder. 17 altered mate records, missing witness seals, false death reports. A living woman your registry says has been dead for nearly 3 years. The color drained from Victor's face. Around them, the hall had become perfectly still. Nora looked at Caleb and understood what had changed. Her secret was no longer the most dangerous truth in Redhaven. Caleb turned toward the royal guards.
"Seal the archive. No records leave this estate."
Then he looked back at Victor.
"At sunrise, you are going to explain every name."
Sunrise came without music. Moon Hall looked different in daylight, stripped of candles and celebration, with every silver banner hanging over a room that had become a royal court. Nora stood beside Evelyn Cross at the long central table. Her leather notebook lay open next to the Redhaven registry, the crown copies, and the sealed evidence from the night before. Victor Harlan sat across the hall under royal guard. Travis stood several feet away from him, pale and silent. Caleb remained at the head of the room, not on a ceremonial throne, but behind the evidence table. That mattered to Nora. This was not a mating ceremony, it was an inquiry. Evelyn began with the records, dates that did not match, witness seals used in places where the witnesses had never been, transfers approved before consent forms were supposedly signed. Then she reached Mara Ellis. Victor spoke for the first time. "Mara Ellis is dead." Caleb looked toward the side doors. "No, she is not." Nora turned as a young woman entered beside 2 crown officers. Light brown hair, gray-green eyes, smaller than Nora remembered. Older, too, but alive. Mara stopped several yards from Victor and refused to look at him. Nora felt something inside her loosen. One name from her notebook had just walked into the room. Mara explained that she had never agreed to the mate transfer listed in Redhaven's registry. She had escaped months later and eventually reached crown protection under another name. She had been afraid to return because she believed Victor still controlled the local courts. Evelyn placed Mara's statement beside the official Redhaven record. The lie no longer lived only on paper. One witness followed another. Not 17, not all at once. Enough. Enough to show a pattern. Enough to prove that Nora had not imagined what she found. Then Evelyn turned to her. Miss Whitfield, the Crown will not compel you to speak. You may provide your statement in writing. Nora looked at the paper waiting beside her. 6 years ago, she would have taken it without hesitation. Writing had been safer. Silence had been safer. She looked toward Caleb. He did not nod. He did not encourage her. He simply waited. The choice was hers. Nora placed both hands on the table. I will speak. Her voice was still soft, but the words carried. She told them about Victor's plan for Travis to claim her when she was 18. She explained how she found the consent law, how pretending to lose her voice forced outside review Victor did not want, and how the archive later revealed the same kind of control being used against other women. She told them about the anonymous copies she sent to the Crown, about the missing Moonbane inventory, about Travis's blue-stained cuff at the feast. Victor interrupted once. Caleb stopped him with a look. No roar, no threat, just authority. By noon, the pattern was complete. The seized ceremonial wine matched the restricted substance missing from Redhaven's inventory. The servant admitted he had acted under orders passed through Travis. Travis, faced with the records and the servant's statement, stopped protecting his father. Victor's polished calm finally disappeared. Caleb stripped him of authority pending royal judgment. Travis was removed from succession and placed under Crown custody while the case proceeded. Then Caleb did something Nora had not expected. Before everyone in Moon Hall, he ordered that every disputed mate bond connected to Redhaven receive independent Crown review. No local alpha would be allowed to decide whether consent had existed. When the room finally emptied, Nora remained beside the evidence table. Caleb approached but stopped several feet away. The mate bond stirred between them, warm and undeniable now. Nora knew he felt it too. The bond may have chosen us, Caleb said quietly, but it does not choose for us. Nora looked up. What does that mean? It means you owe me nothing. His expression softened. Not your voice, not your future, not yourself. For 6 years, Nora had believed freedom required silence. Now the man with enough power to claim almost anything was offering her the one thing no one had ever given her freely: time. And as Caleb turned to leave, Nora realized the next choice would be hers alone. Several months later, Redhaven sounded different. Not louder, freer. The West Wing archive no longer belonged to secrecy. Crown clerks worked beside local record keepers. Every disputed mate file was being reviewed, and every new bond required clear consent witnessed under royal law. Victor Harlan had permanently lost his authority. Travis had been removed from succession, and both cases had passed beyond Redhaven into the royal courts. Nora did not follow every hearing. She had spent too many years letting the Harlans decide the shape of her life. She refused to let their punishment shape the rest of it. Instead, she worked with Evelyn Cross, reviewing records from other packs and helping frightened Omegas understand rights that many had never been told they possessed. Her voice returned to daily life little by little. At first, speaking for more than a few minutes left her throat tired. Then came full conversations, questions during hearings, quiet jokes over morning coffee. One afternoon, she caught herself laughing across the archive table and stopped in surprise. Evelyn only smiled and kept reading. Caleb never asked when Nora would complete the mate bond. He visited Redhaven for Crown business, then began finding reasons to stay after the work was done. They walked through the Moon Garden. They spoke about laws, books, stubborn council members, and ordinary things that had nothing to do with destiny. That mattered to Nora more than she expected. Caleb did not treat every moment between them like a test she had to pass. When the unfinished bond stirred with that familiar warmth, he let it exist without turning it into a demand. One evening, beneath a clear, full moon, Nora found him alone in the garden behind Moon Hall. The stone paths were silver with light, and the last summer flowers moved gently in the breeze. Caleb looked up as she approached. "You are still working too late," he said. Nora smiled. You are still pretending your visits are official. A rare laugh escaped him. That obvious? Very. The silence that followed was easy. Months ago, silence had been armor. Tonight, it was simply quiet. Caleb studied her face. Nora, there is something I need you to know. She waited. You do not owe me a bond because I helped expose Victor. You do not owe me a crown. You do not owe me a future. Nora felt the warmth between them deepen, but there was no pressure in his voice. I know. You are safe without me. I know that too. Caleb nodded slowly. Then why did you come looking for me? Nora stepped closer, stopping within arm's reach. For once, she did not rehearse the words first. Because I spent 6 years believing that freedom meant making myself smaller. Caleb said nothing. He let her finish. You were the first alpha who heard my voice and did not try to own it. His expression softened. Nora held out her hand. Caleb Sterling, I choose you. He looked at her hand, then back at her. Freely? Nora smiled. Freely. Only then did he take her hand. The bond settled between them not like a chain, but like a door opening. Months later, Nora stood with Caleb at the back of Moon Hall during a consent ceremony for a young Omega from another pack. The Crown Advocate asked the woman whether she accepted the bond before her. No one answered for her. No Alpha interrupted. No Guardian stepped forward. The young woman took her time, looked at the man beside her, and gave her own answer. Nora felt Caleb's fingers close gently around hers. She had once believed she had to surrender her voice to keep her freedom. Now, other women could keep both. Maybe that is the real lesson here. Strength is not taking away someone's choices, but protecting their right to make them. I believe love means more when it is freely chosen. What would you have done in Nora's place? Share your thoughts below and subscribe if you want more stories where courage changes everything.